Bathed in sunlight, the shining Jerusalem is a city that, throughout its history, has been the scene of great events in the history of mankind. Jerusalem is one of the oldest cities in the world and was built in the region of Judea. The city became the capital of the Jewish people. Due to its strategic position, Judea was disputed by several powerful kingdoms and empires over the centuries and was ruled by the Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, and many other great civilizations. But with the spread of Christianity, the city of Jerusalem gained even more importance, and the European kingdoms focused their attention on this region. Jerusalem, like other Jewish cities, was inhabited mainly by Jews and Christians, and in the year 638 was conquered by a Muslim caliphate. The city was divided between three different religions which, until then, lived in relative harmony. But in 1009, that changed. The sixth Muslim caliph that reigned in Judea started persecuting the Jews and especially the Christians, ordering the destruction of many churches in Jerusalem. This behavior displeased the Christian kingdoms of Europe, which were already unhappy that the Holy Land was governed by a non-Christian power. However, many feudal lords were waging wars in Europe. Then, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I, fearing that Muslim forces would expand their territories even further, asked Pope Urban II for help, requesting the sending of troops to contain the imminent threat. The Pope accepted the request. With a magnificent speech, he managed to reunite powerful rival kingdoms under the same objective, to reconquer Jerusalem and free the Holy Land from the domain of the Caliphate. The Pope's words were repeated throughout Europe. Even the common people uttered the cry Deus Vult, which means God wills it. Many men embroidered crosses on their garments or battle robes. They became known as the Crusaders and left several European countries for the city of Jerusalem. And that is how the era of the Crusades began. In 1096, the popular crusade began, which can be considered a total failure. Many men of peasant origin and without any combat training gathered in a procession of almost 40,000 people. Among these people were monks, women, and youngsters who had no age to quarrel in the battlefields. This created a great problem in all the territories through which they passed, given that such a large crowd needed much food and provisions for many months of travel. The lack of discipline of this unbalance has also led to episodes of excessive violence. Many villages were looted and destroyed, even though they were not related to the original purpose of the military campaign. In the end, the People's Crusade suffered a humiliating defeat against the Turkish armies. Many crusaders died before they even reached the Holy Land. The first official crusade took place months later. This time, it was composed of 30,000 professional warriors, including 5,000 knights. The fight went on for 2 long years. In 1099, Jerusalem was captured by the Crusaders. But that victory was known for the Crusaders' excessive cruelty. Jerusalem was plundered and devastated. Many citizens were executed, both Muslims and Jews. The event showed that a more efficient command was needed in the battles. To fulfill this objective, several cavalry orders were created. The Order of Knights Hospitaller, the Order of Teutonic Knights, and the Order of Knights Templar are some of the most famous. Jerusalem came under the rule of King Baldwin I, who was crowned shortly after the death of his older brother. The other conquered territories were under the leadership of European feudal lords and became known as the Crusader states. That was not the end of the Crusades, but only the beginning. In the following centuries, conflicts to control the Holy Land became more intense. More than 8 crusades were proclaimed. The most striking events took place in the Third and Fourth Crusades. The Third Crusade is also known as the King's Crusade. This name has to do with the participation of the three greatest sovereigns of that time: King Philip II of France, the German Emperor Frederick I, and Richard the Lionheart of England. Jerusalem had been captured by the famous Sultan Saladin. Pope Gregory VIII once again summoned the Christian kingdoms to reconquer Jerusalem. On the way to Jerusalem, Emperor Frederick I fell off his horse while crossing a river. Due to the weight of his armor, he failed to stand up and ended up drowning. Already in the Holy Land, King Richard justified his nickname of Lionheart. He proved to be a worthy adversary against the armies of Saladin. After conquering some cities, King Richard and Saladin found themselves in a stalemate. The crusade ended when a treaty was signed to guarantee the safety of Christian pilgrims in Jerusalem, a city that would remain under Muslim rule. The Fourth Crusade, also known as the Commercial Crusade, began in 1202. It was summoned by Pope Innocent III, who was not happy with the fact that Jerusalem had no Christian leadership. But this crusade failed to meet its primary goal. It was marked by greed and a lack of preparation of its leaders. The Roman Catholic Church maintained its influence throughout Europe. But in Constantinople, the precepts of the Orthodox Catholic Church were followed. This religious division had long been a source of conflict. Taking advantage of other political intrigues, the leaders of the Crusader armies marched against the city of Constantinople and did not go to the Holy Land. The result was devastating. Constantinople was assaulted, looted, and burned for 3 days. Christians killed other Christians in the streets, and the division between the two Christian churches increased even more. The destruction in Constantinople was so massive that the city never recovered its splendor. After this shocking episode, the Crusaders returned to Europe with the wealth of the city. The popes had the power to declare crusades and propels people's faith to participate in the campaigns. But when the march began, the pope's authority was of little importance, and cases of brutality and looting against cities were common. The kings and lords who took part in the Crusades allowed these things to happen. After all, much of what was looted ended up in his personal coffers. The ideal of fighting in the name of faith had been lost. The other Crusades can be considered a succession of failures, as Muslim armies were often able to recover the territories conquered by the Crusaders. Shortly after the Ninth Crusade, Europeans lost control of the Palestinian territories. And after 200 years of conflict in the name of faith, the Crusaders in the Middle East ended. It is estimated that about 1 million people lost their lives during the Crusades. The ideal of the God-fearing knight who seeks penance for his acts of violence has given rise to many tales in medieval literature. On the one hand, the Crusades have caused much destruction and suffering, but they have also served to create new lines of trade between East and West, something that would influence the world in upcoming centuries. The field of navigation also experienced major breakthroughs. Sea expeditions became more frequent. Some cavalry orders survived for a while, among them the Order of Teutonic Knights, which maintained much of its military glory and fought many battles in Europe. There were also some unofficial crusades, such as the Northern Crusades, where Catholic kings from Sweden and Denmark joined forces to attack people who kept their pagan traditions alive. They even attacked Orthodox Christians in Russia. The Crusades defined a substantial part of the territorial divisions between countries and also the cultural and religious schisms between peoples. Regarding the much disputed city of Jerusalem, it continued to be the scene of several invasions and bloody battles. Today, its identity remains undefined, being disputed by Palestinians and Israelis. Knowing who was on the right and wrong sides of the Crusades is a question that may never have an answer. But these were episodes that allowed valuable lessons to be learned and how dangerous the misuse of faith can be. The three religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are still present in Jerusalem, worshipped by many people who seek only to follow their faith peacefully.